Hello, everybody. I'm Rick Dancer. Welcome to Get Real with Rick Dancer. Tonight, we're going to talk about a ballot measure going on in Oregon that it's actually bringing some Democrats and Republicans together to fight it. It's one of these bills or measures that sounds so good. I'm sure when the initiative petitioner walked up to the person on the street and said, "Do you think you should get a check for $1,600 every year and charge big business for it?" It sounds like, hell yes, that sounds great. What often happens in Oregon is it is a test ground for what is going on in the country. And it ends up being a place where, a few years ago, it was ballot measure 110, where they legalized basically hard drugs, thinking that the addicts would then ask for help. It didn't work. And now they're backpedaling as a state. So petitioners go to Oregon to test it, to see, hey, I wonder if we can get anybody to go for this. Let's try Oregon. That's one thing that needs to change. But we're going to talk with folks who are fighting this measure because it could have some drastic and devastating effects on the state of Oregon. So we'll get to that in just a second. Our sponsors are Dr. Michael Bratland out of Eugene, Oregon. Chris Dental, caring and trusted. Dr. Bratland loves these kind of conversations because he thinks we should be even more involved in what's going on. Also, Albert Taylor, Endless Possibilities, works with people in Eugene and Springfield who are people we used to say had disabilities, but we now know that they have different abilities. Matt McCarl. Whoa, that was me. Sorry, Matt. New Leaf Hyperbarics and Wellness Center. If you're looking for somebody to teach you more about hyperbarics and how it works, he also does light therapy, massage, just about everything. And Greg Hinkle, New American Funding right here in Helena, Montana, a former Oregonian as well. He's the guy you go to if you want to move to Oregon or if you want to move to Montana, Idaho, or Washington. He's licensed in all those different states. Montana Oral Surgeons and Dental Implant Center. The woman who works there, who I work with, another Oregonian who came to Montana. There's a bunch of us out here. we're taking over. We're really not. We don't want to take over anything. We just want to assimilate. Gosh, Angela Wilhelms, you don't say that in Montana.
My grandparents lived in Montana. My mom's from Montana. You are right. You don't say that.
I asked somebody when I first moved here, I said, what should I not do? And they said, don't tell people you're from Oregon first. Say, I'm not from California. Then you can tell them where you're really from and they won't care.
Well played. Well played.
So, Angela, tell people who you're with in this respect today. So you're on the No on 118.
Yeah, absolutely. So in my day job, I'm the president and CEO of Oregon Business and Industry, or OBI. OBI is the statewide chamber of commerce. We're also the state's affiliate for the National Association of Manufacturers and the National Retail Federation. So at our core, we are the leading business advocacy organization when it comes to state level policy and politics. And that has led us to be the organization leading the coalition and the fight that is the No on Measure 118 campaign. And I have the honor and the privilege of serving as chair of that coalition.
Because to the voter, and I can see why, when I pulled up a couple news stories out of Portland and watched them, and you can see why as a initiative petition signer, somebody comes up and says, you'll get a rebate of $116 or $1,600. Every Oregonian will get $1,600, and they're going to charge big business to do it. What we don't think about is what that does in terms of businesses that are here, and will they stay here? Will they leave? What's that going to do? What do you see in this committee as the biggest problem with this?
Oh, look, Rick, thanks for having us and giving us a chance to talk about this. This measure 118, is so deeply flawed. Let me just hit a couple of things really quickly, and then we can take questions, as you want them.
I love it.
Measure 118 is a massive tax on the sale of goods and services. It is a gross receipts tax. It has, so a business will pay this tax whether they have a big profit, a small profit, or if they're losing money. It's a tax on the sale, again, of goods and services. And that means it's going to be higher prices on everything from groceries to gasoline to utilities to medicine. I mean, we're taxing medicine and medical services in this. It's the largest tax increase in Oregon's history. And it's coming at a time when the cost of living here is already so high that Oregonians are spending $11,000 more a year to buy the same goods and services they bought in 2021. So this is going to raise prices. It's going to hurt those who can least afford it. And it's going to make Oregon products and Oregon companies less competitive than activity and companies happening in other states. It's just a deeply flawed, costly tax on sales.
And it's because they make it sound like it's just going to be the richest of the rich who will pay this. But if anybody has, what's my show? I guess I can say whatever I want. If anybody has a brain, you know that when you start taxing businesses at the top, that's going to funnel down. Not because they're big, mean people. It's because profits have to be made to stay in business. Any of us who are business people understand that. And so those are going to trickle down, which is when you're saying the price of everything is going to go up. And what is that going to do to how many businesses are going to want to locate in Oregon knowing that they're going to be penalized this way?
Yeah, one of the things OBI talks a lot about is the state's slipping competitiveness when it comes to economic activity, attractiveness as a place to do business. We have so many natural good things going for us, and we just seem to take those for granted and enact these policies and laws and measures. And the thing about this that folks need to remember too is this is actually brought to us, was funded by out-of-state interests, by California interests who won't have to pay this tax themselves. So they can watch this experiment unfold while Oregonians pay the price for more expensive groceries, more expensive nights out at a restaurant, more expensive utilities, electricity, etc.
So why are these big groups from out of state taking little old Oregon, on the West Coast and seeing, let's see if we can pass it there? What do they get out of it?
Well, I can't speculate. I didn't spend a lot of time. They didn't spend a lot of time asking me my opinions before they did this. So
they did not go through that whole process and say, "Hey,
they did not vet this with us on the front end." So I can't speculate. But what I know is that Oregonians now have this on their ballot. Those ballots are going to be going out in mid-October. And Oregonians have a very clear decision before them, which is, do they want to, enact the largest tax increase in Oregon's history? And as you said, suffer the consequences of higher prices, of higher costs for everyday goods and services, and, pass a law that is going to make made in Oregon products, which we're all really proud of. We're really proud to buy those goods more expensive. And I think the answer is going to be no. Oregonians aren't going to be into that.
I was also reading where this could put some people who are, on the poverty line, that other $1,600 could actually put them in a different bracket and keep them from getting the benefits that they really need. I mean, it's $1,600 is not a lot of money in a year. You know what I mean? It's not like you're winning the lottery.
Well, especially when you think that you're going to have to pay federal income tax on this money. So Uncle Sam's going to get a chunk right off the top. You're going to be paying higher prices for the things that you buy for your, kids are going back to school this week or this month, and their pens and pencils and scissors and glue sticks are all going to be more expensive. The school lunches are going to cost more. This is going to even cost local and state governments hundreds of millions of dollars a year thanks to inflationary pressures. So that means they're in turn going to have to raise taxes or cut services. And it just goes on and on and on.
I saw that one thing that's interesting too, Angela, is somebody who's been there and then not there, is this is bringing the governor, Tina Kotek. She's against this, which kind of, you kind of wonder, that's a new coalition you're working together. Not that you guys don't get along, but I'm just saying your politics are probably somewhat different. And she's really come out against this.
Yeah, we're really proud of the coalition that has come together and continues to grow. We've only been at this for a couple of months, as this measure was only qualified at the end of July. It only became Measure 118 on August 1st. But already we have more than 450 businesses and organizations that have publicly endorsed. People can see that list on our website, which is noonmeasure118.com. Over 400 individuals have joined, and a number of those, as you mentioned, are Republican and Democrats from the legislature, city mayors and city councilors, county commissioners. But we've got labor organizations, we've got healthcare providers, we've got, nonprofits and right-leaning think tanks and left-leaning think tanks. And I think what that tells us is just how deeply flawed this measure is when all of those people are united in opposition.
But Angela, how concerned are you? Because you have to be, we know that a lot of voters don't educate themselves a ton. And which is, I'm guessing, why you guys are going so full steam to get this word out, because it's a very tantalizing carrot to put out there on a ballot, especially in a state when, your voters pamphlet is a tabloid newspaper. Here, every Oregonian, please hear this. When I was running for Secretary of State, this drove me crazy, Angela. It's like, it's paid advertising. Most of the stuff in that voters pamphlet is paid for by someone. So they're trying to coerce you into voting one way or the other. So be very careful when you're reading that stuff. But what do you got to be a little concerned that people are going to go, oh yeah, I want this money.
Yeah, this is why we're running a full-fledged campaign. As you said, full steam ahead. We are very committed to talking to voters, to informing them about the realities of this measure. And I know this from having worked in and around politics and being a lifelong Oregonian. Oregonians are, at the end of the day, they're pretty smart. They're going to know that free money isn't free. They're going to know that they will end up paying for this. And so that's the good news in this. But you're right, it's a noisy election cycle. You've got the federal races, competitive congressional races, you've got other ballot measures. We've got to talk to voters, and so we're doing that in all corners of the state. It's actually my favorite part of the job is, I have an excuse to travel the state and talk to Oregonians. It's great.
So do you think that businesses will, if this passed, that businesses will leave? Do you think there will be?
I do. And it's easy for someone to write that off and say, oh, you're being hyperbolic. But no, it is true. We have heard from business owners who have said that there is no incentive. If you're a low margin business and a tax that is a tax on your gross receipts on the sales of 3%, which for restaurants, for grocers, for construction, even for a lot of fuel providers, that will eradicate their margin. And so we have heard from some that have said they will close their operations in Oregon. Certainly not all of them will close, but in order to survive, they're going to have to raise prices. So, or they're going to have to, reduce jobs. So there's just no good outcome here.
You bring up an interesting point, because one of Oregon's big problems, like most of the country, but it's especially big in Oregon, is affordable housing. How does adding another 3% onto the cost of a home make housing in Oregon, especially Portland, Eugene, and Springfield? How does that? Here's this big goal we seem to have is affordable housing, and now we're going to not only stop logging on hundreds and hundreds of acres, which brings the cost of timber up, but you're going to add 3% on top of the cost of construction, building permits, all that stuff. How do you get?
Well, and it's actually more than 3%, because it's 3% on the things you mentioned. But think about it. Think about this. Let's take a 2x4, a pretty basic wood product that is used quite ubiquitously in housing, or even, a DIY project where someone wants to fix the fence or their patio. If we harvest that timber sustainably here in Oregon, we send it to an Oregon mill to be processed into the 2x4.
Oh.
The mill sends it to a distributor or a wholesaler sells it either to like a home builder or maybe a retailer, doesn't matter. 3%, 3%, 3%, 3%. That 2x4 is now, notwithstanding all of the other inflationary impacts, 12% more expensive.
You know what
So
also,
it's the economists call it pyramiding. It's a real serious problem here.
so it's interesting too, because Oregonians are famous for shooting down sales tax all the time. And this is a sales tax. It's called something different, but it really is going to end up being a sales tax.
It's actually worse than a traditional sales tax, which is at the final point of sale to the consumer.
Yeah.
You know, that's what we're all used to experiencing when we travel or when you shop in Montana. Now we understand a sales tax is at the cash register. At the end of the day, when I buy something as a consumer, I pay that tax. But this happens at every step of the supply chain in Oregon. So there's going to be an incentive for some of those supply chain steps to go out of Oregon or take place out of Oregon because they're immediately less expensive. So how does that help the state? How does that help create jobs and lift people up and provide economic prosperity? It doesn't.
So when your other hat's on and you're working for the Chamber of Commerce, basically for the state, when you're talking to businesses, how much does things like this, like Measure 110, Measure 118, these measures that are hidden costs to people, how much does that come up in conversations when you're trying to lure businesses to Oregon?
Oh, all the time. When you take the cost of doing business, the cost of doing business is one piece, but the cost of living generally. So employers care about their workers.
Right.
They need to recruit and retain and support, and they take very seriously the role they have in supporting those family wage jobs. And when the cost of living goes up and the cost of doing business goes up, that all becomes economically infeasible. And so employers are struggling with this, and they're having to make these hard decisions about raising prices, cutting jobs, or potentially selling or shutting down. And that is exactly the wrong direction we should be going right now. We should be having conversations about growth, about prosperity, about investment in Oregon.
So when people are voting, they need to be thinking about the Intel layoffs and the things like that, the messages that are being put out there already, because Oregon's such a beautiful place, but you can't bank. I mean, I love it. I didn't want to leave, but it's a beautiful place, but you can't bank on. I feel like sometimes Oregon has gone, well, we're so beautiful, we don't have to worry about it. Well, you kind of do now.
Yeah, we can't take for granted some of the things that have always been our inherent advantages: the beauty, the quality of life, the recreation, the Pacific Rim location and access to ports, the water supply, low energy prices. All of those things are in flux now. And the economy doesn't, domestic economies don't recognize state boundaries, really. So there are incentives and reasons that other states are actively recruiting Oregon companies, and we need to put a stop to that. But the last thing we need right now is this costly tax on sales, again, on the sale of basic goods and services, that's just going to make it more expensive for Oregon business and more expensive for consumers, including, by the way, the low income and fixed income individuals who have to buy those necessities.
Right. And that's the other one when we talk about affordable housing, and we also then talk about, the people who often come up with these ideas like, here's $1,600 for everybody. This is going to just, change your world. And it's like, are you really thinking about the poor and the people who need the money the most? There's better ways to do this to help out the people on the bottom. This is not the way. It almost plays into this whole BS where here's your $1,600. It was like when the pandemic, when we each got, our check for whatever it was. That really went far when your business was shut down for 4 months. You know what I mean? It's like this doesn't quite equal out. We really got to be cognizant of what we're looking at when we're reading that piece of paper.
Yeah, that's right. There's, it's not nearly as simple as some would like you to believe it is. And I think when Oregonians uh, get their ballots and study the measure and read the information that's out there, and again, we take very seriously our obligation to communicate with voters with objective, fact-based, cited, sourced information. They can get all of that at noonmeasure118.com. But what they're going to see is exactly that economists have long considered a gross receipts tax, a tax on sales like this, to be a regressive tax. They're going to see that the free money is not free. And really, Rick, this is like high school economics here. You tax sales, prices go up. It's not rocket science. And I think Oregonians are going to see through this. They're going to realize that this only makes it harder for individuals to keep up with the quality of life they want to live. Hopefully that means they'll join our coalition and vote no at the end of the day.
You got a big group of people too. I mean, I was looking at you got Nike, you got all these big companies on board because they see what this is going to really do to not just them, but their employees. That's who's going to pay.
Yeah, that's right. And that's why, yes, there are big companies, there are small companies, there are sole proprietorships, there are entrepreneurs. Like I said earlier, there's doctors, there's labor unions, there's the coalition. I've and I think you and I first met when I was starting out in politics. I've been in and around the Oregon legislature in politics for over 20 years now, and I have never seen anything like this. It's really a testament to how flawed this costly tax on sales is.
Well, I have to admit that when you just said that gave me goosebumps, and I mean that because I think that's what maybe another bright side of this, Angela, is that we found that we can agree on stuff like what is good for Oregon, all Oregon. The best, yes, some people will benefit from this, some people won't. I mean, but what the big picture for the entire state, wouldn't it be cool if this campaign could bring people together to go, now what's the next thing? Instead of fighting something, what's the next thing we can work together to make happen? That's what gives you a little bit of hope, huh?
It does. I mean, we're talking now about this measure that's before voters that's going to result in reduced jobs, reduced growth in wages and income and population, and all this negative stuff. And you're right. That's why folks are rallying in opposition. But you're right. Hopefully, coming out of this, we can get through this election and we can have a conversation about, okay, how do we grow the economy? How do we create more private sector activity so that people have more jobs, so that there's more community philanthropy, so that there, is more tax revenue from a bigger pie to support those necessary services. And that's the conversation at OBI we like to have. We wish we were having right now. Unfortunately, this is, we're facing this measure instead.
But maybe that's what leads to that conversation because, I was just having a small business after losing the race for Secretary of State. I mean, my wife and I looked at each other and went, oh, this is so unfriendly to business. I mean, we're small. We're just like this. I can't imagine what a company with 25 or 30 employees and bigger would have to deal with. And I have a friend and he's a cool guy. A little, pretty much on the liberal front. And he was a counselor for a state organization, a therapist. He went out on his own. And the first post I see on Facebook is, how come nobody ever told me about estimated taxes? And I went and I said, welcome to Oregon Business Friendly. It was like, my wife called in Montana and she said, do I need to do this every 3 months like I did in Oregon? She goes, why would you do that? No, just do it once a year. You don't have to do this every 3 months. And it was like, those little things mean such a lot to small businesses that are just trying to move through stuff. And that's what made the discussions could be in the future for Oregon. Wouldn't that be cool if this led to little things like that are big things to small business?
Yeah, no, that's right. And big things to small business, but big things to individuals and people too. This is a really important conversation, and I love that optimism, and I'm gonna hold on to that, because that's, as we develop our legislative agenda for 2025 as an organization and look past this coalition, that's exactly the conversation we hope to be having.
Yeah, I'm excited for you, Angela. I think that, and for my old state, I think that's really cool okay, we did that, we did this, and now where do we move from there? That's pretty dang cool. Well,
Yeah, but first things first, we
yeah.
gotta get out to people and make sure they understand the problems with this measure.
Well, Angela, thank you. It was really good seeing you again.
Likewise.
Angela was starting this when I was starting my run for Secretary of State, and I thought you were like the big expert, and because I knew nothing, it was like they kicked me off out into the thing. And I remember going to my first event, and they said, well, you go in and you pitch yourself. And I said, I don't even know what I'm doing. And they said, well, watch everybody else. So I waited for all my opponents to get up and do their thing. And then I went, oh, okay, I get that. And then jump in. But it was like, into the frying pan. But you helped me, and I did appreciate that. And I do remember that.
But anybody who puts their name on a ballot deserves an immense amount of gratitude. So thank you for doing that, and thanks for your years in the news business, telling stories and asking the hard questions, and like this tax on sales, getting to the root of the issue and helping to make sure people are aware.
What's fun is it's almost, because I'm doing this timber project too, it's almost easier, Angela, to be out of the state and doing it, because again, I'll get people going, you don't even live here, what do you care? And I said, oh, I will always care about Oregon. And I said, but out here, I'm distanced from it, so I don't live in it, and I can be even more obnoxious if I want to.
I was going to say objective, but you chose
well,
the word
both
first.
of those, both objective, obnoxious. It's, they're all kind of intertwined sometimes.
Sure.
Hey,
Yeah.
thank you so much for taking your time, and also just thanks. I'm not a journalist now, so I can say I hope you win. I thank you for fighting this thing, because I really do think it's the education piece that people just need to understand. This is not. Yeah, we all need more money in our pocket, but this is not the tool. This is not going to do it. It's $1,600 will go away in 3 months of grocery bills.
Yeah. No, thank you for having us. And just I'll do one last plug. Folks should go to knowonmeasure118.com. That's where they can get all the info.
All right, Angela, thank you so much again for joining us.
Thanks,
See you
Rick.
later.